Hello everyone, welcome to our video on the science of protectionism in Britain. Today, we explore how rising tariffs and trade barriers affected Britain in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. We will see that the effects of protectionism can be measured with scientific precision, that history gives us a clear lesson on the importance of open trade. In the late 19th century, Britain saw its export markets adopt protectionist policies as they worked to industrialize on their own. These markets started producing the manufactured goods that Britain used to export. As a result, British exports declined, and this phenomenon has been called export-retarded growth. When demand dropped, British manufacturers held back on investing in new technology and equipment. This is a clear example of how science and numbers reveal the effect of policy on productivity. British exports faced very different tariff levels in different markets. In one market, exports were met with a tariff of 3%, while in others, tariffs reached 25%, 34%, 73%, and even 131%. Recent research shows that a 1 percentage point increase in a tariff reduced the volume of British exports by more than 3%. This relationship is nearly identical to what modern data reveals, and it makes our historical experiment even more interesting. Protectionism is not just a dry topic from the history books. Imagine a scientist in a laboratory who cannot test his experiment because a bouncer at the door stops his reagents from entering the lab. That bouncer is like a protectionist tariff, and it slows the progress of science and growth. It is funny to picture such a scene, yet the consequences for an economy can be very serious. The story does not end with foreign tariffs. In the interwar era, Britain turned inward and embraced its own protectionist policies. The government imposed tariffs and safeguarding duties to shield domestic industries from foreign competition. This led to weak competition between British and foreign firms. With less competition, there was less incentive to innovate and adopt new productivity-enhancing technologies. Data shows that Britain experienced a slowdown in labor productivity growth during this period. In fact, one study found that the trend rate of labor productivity growth peaked in 1870 at about 2.1% per year, and then decelerated as export growth slowed down. Science teaches us that trade policies are like controlled experiments in an economic laboratory. The export-retarded growth hypothesis tells us that when foreign protectionism reduces demand for exports, manufacturers cut back on investment. When investments in new capital are reduced, the economy misses out on the benefits of cutting-edge technology and improved management practices. In simple terms, protectionism stifles the engine of productivity. Another twist in our historical experiment came with the formation of the British Imperial trade bloc. Facing high tariffs abroad, Britain and its dominions began to use preferential tariff rates to trade among themselves. Canada nearly doubled the value of British exports when it adopted a policy of imperial preference. Other dominions, such as New Zealand, South Africa, Australia, and eventually India, followed suit. This reconfiguration of trade not only created a network of preferential markets, but also served as a countermeasure to the high tariffs imposed by foreign nations. In the later decades, protectionism continued to shape Britain in the 20th century. After the Great Depression, the government passed the Import Duties Act and imposed a 10% duty on nearly all imports. This policy and the formation of the Import Duties Advisory Committee reduced competition even further and contributed to the slow pace of productivity growth. Economic historians have shown that weak competition and the absence of incentives for innovation eventually allowed other countries, such as France and West Germany, to overtake Britain in productivity. In summary, the science of economic history shows us that protectionism has long-term effects on productivity and trade patterns. Without protectionist policies, Britain might have enjoyed faster productivity growth and a different trade structure. The numbers and data are clear, and they remind us that policy choices have measurable consequences. Thank you for joining us on this scientific journey through Britain's protectionist past.